Hey everybody, this is part of our full-length primetime podcast. You can check it out on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, plenty more. I hope you enjoy.
But Brandon, we are going to move on. We're actually going to keep the 12, Brandon. We're going to erase the pack right in a big. We're keeping the 12, putting the big, because we're moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, and we are moving to that team that I said that we're going to talk about. We're moving on to Texas because you know everything's bigger in Texas. And Brandon, I'm just going to get right to it. Spring game happened this week for the Texas Longhorns. And looking at the stats, we have basically Shane Buchele went out there and shined for the Longhorns. And he went with 1 interception, 23 of 39 passing, and a total of 3 touchdowns for 369 yards. But, Brandon, I'm going to get right to it. I'm going to ask you this. Tom Herman, he not ready to make a starter. He's saying, you know what, I am not going to name Shane Buchele the starter. However, congratulations, Brandon. We have just fired Tom Herman. You are now the new head coach of the Texas Longhorns. Hook 'em horns. Are you going to start Shane Buchele for the Texas Longhorns?
Well, again, I think that I would have to go in the footsteps of my predecessor, Tom Herman, and say I also don't know if I would give him the starting job just yet because, yes, he was the starter last year. You had a different regime. Charlie Strong was there. He ended up having a pretty good season. He ended up with over 2,900 yards, 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. So pretty solid. But nothing that I think you necessarily want to repeat. The interceptions, that's not bad. The touchdowns, those need to go up. You need to be able to score some more touchdowns and throw for some more yards. If you could have about a 3,500-yard season, 30 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, we're having a great season. Now, that's a little bit dramatic from where it is right now, but I still think right now, I don't think that I would be too quick to name a starting quarterback. Tom Herman's got 2 quarterbacks on the roster right now. 2 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster. And he is going to be looking to try and get a transfer from somewhere to have another guy that they can compete with. Tom Herman doesn't want to come into a situation and have Texas continue to lose. He wants to be able to make sure that he has the best talent out there on the field in game 1, if he can. And I think that also it's good to try and have competition because it shows what guys will do to win. Who's going to put in the longer hours in the weight room? Who's going to be here early in the morning? Who's going to stay late at night? Who's going to put in those hours? You get to see a true character of somebody who wants it, someone who thinks they deserve it, or, something else. But I'm not saying I'm not even saying that Shane Buchele thinks he deserves or anything like that. Not at all. Not what I'm saying. I'm saying that sometimes you get to see character of somebody. Who's going to be the best? Who's got the best character? Who's got what it takes to win? And who's going to go out there and get the job done? So I think Tom Herman's sitting back and saying, there's no way I'm going to name a starting quarterback now when you've gone through these spring training camps and you haven't even been hit yet. Yeah, that'd be a little ridiculous to say, yep, you're my guy. You haven't taken a hit. You haven't fallen down. I like you. Let's go.
Well, and the thing is, this is we talked about last week about a kid named Kelly Bryant at Clemson. We talked about the same thing. Should he be the starting quarterback for the Clemson Tigers? And to me, it was a different situation. Didn't play well in the senior game, injured in the senior game, he injured ligaments in his throwing pinky in that game. However, he was taking hits in that game. This is kind of the opposite. Shane Buchele, almost called him Sam Buchele. I'm thinking of Sam Darnold. Shane Buchele, phenomenal. 3 touchdowns, 2 of them to Colin Johnson. He led 5 scoring drives for this Texas offense in the spring game. And I know what you're thinking, Ricky, don't get too overhyped about a spring game. It's a spring game. But look at the other side. He didn't get hit. Kelly Bryant got hit, tore a ligament, didn't play that well. Shane Buchele played phenomenally, didn't get hit. So one of the things that you're looking at is I agree with you. You don't want to give a guy a job too much, like too soon, because you want to see if he's got that drive, if he's got that determination, that it factor that you want in a quarterback. However, I look at Shane Buchele in this spring game and I go, that's your starting quarterback. Let's be honest. He might not be named the starting quarterback now, but there's pretty good odds that Shane Buchele is going to be the starting quarterback for this Longhorn team, because right now I'm looking at the spring roster, and you mentioned how they have two guys who are under scholarship, but they have on their spring roster listed, they have 3 quarterbacks down. They have Buchele, they have Endlinger, and they have Josh Colvey. Those are it.
Ellinger. Sam Ellinger.
Ellinger's the freshman. Colvey and Buchele are both sophomores. Let's be honest. Colvey's probably going to be the third stringer. To me, it's between Endlinger and Buchele.
You just make up these names.
I make them up all the time.
You just make them up.
Brandon, correct me again.
Sam Ellinger.
Ellinger. L, like the letter L.
There's not even an N in here.
Ellinger.
Sam Endlinger.
Endlinger.
The hell?
Sounds cooler than Ellinger. I am sorry. I apologize to Sam.
Don't even say his last name. Just see
Ellinger. See, I got it right now. Ellinger.
We'll go with it.
See, we're learning here. I'm learning, Brandon. But that's what I'm saying. He's probably going to be the second stringer. There's no way if I'm Tom Herman, I pass on Buchele right now, because unless you really think that Ellinger gives you the best chance to win, I'm not going to think more times than not that a freshman, a true freshman, gives me that best chance to win unless you're Jalen Hurts. Oh, wait, Jalen Hurts lost in the national championship. Nonetheless, that was my knock at Alabama. I'm sorry, Brandon. But my point is, Buchele has proven himself to be the starter in my eyes, both of what I saw last year and what I've seen already in this spring game, that I'm going experience over the hotshot freshman coming in. And I think Buchele will be the starter for this Texas team when we get to day one.
I think that you are probably almost 100% correct. Because right now you brought up this situation with Kelly Bryant, and I think that that's an interesting point to bring up too, because Bryant was a guy who had been on the roster, and he was a guy who was a junior and had been there, had seen it, had not had a lot of experience in the starting role, but wasn't a whole lot of room for him, and he had been there. Now it's between a true freshman in Sam Ellinger and a sophomore in Shane Buchele. Now, to give it to the experienced veteran quarterback, you're giving it to Buchele, the sophomore. They don't have that junior. They don't have that senior at Texas. But in a sense, I think if I'm Tom Herman, I'm excited about that, because I get to be able to mold and develop a young quarterback along to hopefully in his senior year, even his junior, be a dominant presence out there on the field and be a really, really good quarterback and a good captain moving forward as well.
Well, and that's the thing. And I look back to Herman at Houston. When he came into Houston, what type of quarterback did he have, Brandon? He didn't have an underclassman. He didn't have a guy who was a freshman, sophomore. No, he had Greg Ward Jr., who was the senior quarterback leading that offense. Totally different story here at Texas. And that's why in the previous segment, when we were talking about USC, I think that Texas overall now is going to be a better team than they were last year. But I think this might be the year where either one of two things is going to happen. Either they don't take any steps forward, which would be the kind of catastrophic, oh no, hit the panic button situation. But what I think will happen is option 2, where they're in a lot more games this year. They don't win a lot of games. They don't win a lot of additional games, but they're closer. There are a lot of close losses this year. and then next year they kind of take that big step. I kind of compare it to the Cubs on a lesser scale from 2015 to 2016. 2015, no one expected them to make it as far as they did in the playoffs. The next year, they won the World Series. Now, I'm not saying that, the Longhorns are going to win the Big 12 but miss the playoffs and then next year be in the playoffs. No, I'm not being that crazy. What I'm saying is on a lesser scale, they're going to be in games this year. This is the year where Tom Herman's going to build that culture, and then next year will be the year where it's like, okay, we are ready to go, maybe with and it's going to be interesting. What I think will happen is Buchele will be the starter this year, and then next year he will be that upperclassman to lead them when they make that next step from close losses to, hey, we're winning games and now we're in the fight for a Big 12 title.
I think you're right, and I think that it would be great to see some more strides made this season from Buchele, be able to, in some of the games that they're not expected to be in, be able to compete in those games. I think that people will probably take a look at that USC game, and again, we talked about this earlier, but that USC game in Texas, and most people would probably say, oh, USC will probably, rake them. But I think that it'd be great for Texas to be able to be in that game, compete well in that game. The Oklahoma, you got Oklahoma State back to back. That's dirty. That ain't right.
They had the same thing last year,
but
too.
I think that, those games, if they can be able to be in those with Baker Mayfield and Mason Rudolph, and I think that those are going to be the big things. And for Shane Buchele, let's go out there, do your best, kid, and do not turn the football over, because that's going to be one of the things that's going to help you win as a quarterback. Is if you just do not turn the football over, or you limit those turnovers, that truly is going to give you one of the best chances to win.
The best odds, and this is record-wise, this is the best I think the Longhorns will go. Like, an undefeated season for them would be a 3-loss season. And that's because I do not think that they beat Sam Darnold and the Trojans at USC. I don't think they beat Oklahoma this year, and I don't think they beat Oklahoma State. The Oklahoma State, I might give you close losses in those games, but I don't think you beat them. The thing that I think will happen, and I'm kind of going to tweak my answer a little bit, where they might not be, those games will be close losses. But what I'm looking at is last year, some of the losses that you had, you lost to, in your own division, Kansas in overtime. If you lose to Kansas, get out of the Big 12. Just go. Kansas isn't good, Brandon.
No.
They've been at the bottom of the Big 12 forever. And I'm exaggerating, but for almost my entire life, my entire football watching career, my football watching life, Kansas has been a basketball school. I've never once been like, woo, I'm excited for Kansas football this year. You lose to West Virginia. West Virginia lost their senior quarterback this year. TCU, those are the 3 opponents I look at. Maybe Kansas State as well. Those 4 games. Win those games this year, and just 3 losses, and that is a home run winning season for Texas. If you make it this year with USC, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State being your only losses, because it's going to be interesting. Just in the Big Ten alone, I mean, K-State, I think they can flip that this year. Kansas, I hope they can flip that this year. West Virginia, I hope they can flip that. TCU, to me, is the wild card because it's on the road, and TCU's going to want to play them close. But every other game, Baylor, I think they'll win. Iowa State, I'll think they win. Texas Tech no longer has Pat Mahomes, but somebody will step up for the Ryan Gosling Red Raiders. Yeah, there's my joke there. And I think that this could be a 3-loss season for Texas. But look at the next season, past this one. Those 2 losses between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, who are 2 guys that both of those teams are losing after this season?
They're quarterbacks.
They're quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield, Mason Rudolph, out of here. Get out. So you just have to say, let's just play successful, play close this year. And guess what, Shane? You show me something this year, next year this conference could be yours to rule. Could be yours to rule, but you got to lay the foundation this year. You got to show me the foundations of that leadership, of being the starter, of being the guy that we go, the first quarterback we think of when we think of the Big 12, Shane Buchele. You've got to show the foundations this year with a Mayfield, with a Rudolph in your division. Well, in your conference, I should say.
And according to a Power 5 defensive assistant, he said that Buchele, when referring to Buchele, he can run, but he's not a runner. Buchele isn't their, speaking about Texas, their type of quarterback unless they change their system. So that may be another reason why Tom Herman is not committed to Shane Buchele right now, because he is hoping to be able to have another quarterback that may fit his system a little bit more. I mean, again, remember what he had when he was at Houston. Greg Ward Jr., who was more dual threat, while Buchele looks more like just a one threat. Un threat.
Well, and I mean, the other thing that you got to look at is the thing that, and I'm trying to pull up the entire list of exactly who was there when he was with the Ohio State Buckeyes. And in Houston in his 2 years, he had Greg Ward Jr. So we already know what Greg Ward brought to the table. But just as the offensive coordinator behind Urban Meyer from 2012 to 2014, think about the 3 quarterbacks that they've had in that time. Braxton Miller, Cardell Jones, J.T. Barrett. What do all 3 of those guys have in common? They are guys that, yes, they could pass, but they could also run. And the thing for me is Buchele doesn't compare. I'm going to use Cardell and Braxton as the main 2 examples. Doesn't have the athleticism as Miller. And I know what you're saying. Wow, Ricky, did it take a lot of film to figure out that one? And with Cardell Jones, Buchele doesn't have the size that Cardell Jones had. Cardell Jones was a guy where, they would say, oh, yeah, Miller's more of the runner. Cardell Jones is the guy that they would use in the pocket more. But I look at Cardell Jones, and I mean, right now he's 6'5", 250-pound quarterback. I go ahead and I'm going to go back to Shane Buchele just to pull up his measurements. Got to hit back a couple times on my laptop, but he's not as big as Cardell Jones. He's a lot smaller of a guy, 6'1", 191. So he's about 60 pounds less than Cardell and about 4 inches shorter than Cardell. So you could say, hey, Ricky, Cardell Jones was that kind of quarterback that, could use his legs, but they didn't really want to use him as a runner like Braxton Miller was. But Cardell Jones had size. He could go out there and, bam, truck guys and use that 250-pound, 6'5" frame, whereas Buchele doesn't have that. And I think you're onto something. That might be something that you look at, because you look at the freshmen that they have, 6'2", 225. So only an inch taller, but he's got a little bit more size on him. So maybe this could be either one of 2 things. I think Buchele is the starter for Texas when we get to the beginning of the season, but it's going to go either one of 2 ways, and there's a fork in the road, Brandon. On one side, Buchele shows that he's the starter and wins the job for his junior season, or he doesn't do too hot this year, and then next year, boom, sophomore quarterback takes over in Ellinger?
I think it's going to be something interesting to see what plays out and where the direction that Tom Herman ends up wanting to go here. He has to. You almost. It's one of those situations where you have to play the cards that you're dealt, and that's what he's been dealt there. This is his first season at Texas. I'm interested to see what happens. I'm interested to see what Buchele's able to do, what strides he's able to make, to see what Tom Herman wants to do from there.
Well, and this is where we're going to turn it on to you guys. Let us know, Texas fans. We want to hear from you, of course. Let us know, should Shane Buchele be the starter? Do you think he's going to be the starter day one this year? And how do you think this quarterback situation kind of sorts itself out the rest of this summer and the rest of this season? Make your predictions down below in the comment section.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed a lot of emotion. If you want more, click this video right over my left shoulder. You will certainly not regret it.